My mom is inviting you to dinner today. I read a message from my fiancé a day before the wedding. At the end of the evening, my future mother-in-law said something in Italian to my fiancé, and they both laughed. Before leaving, I smiled, took my mother-in-law by the hand, and said in perfect Italian, "My name's Julia Bennett. I'm 31 years old. I'm at a long lacquered table in Brooklyn the night before my wedding, pretending to enjoy olive oil that tastes like a dare. It's green and peppery and coats my tongue in a way that feels aggressive. Across from me, my future mother-in-law, Rosetta Viri, holds a glass of red wine like a judge about to read a sentence. The crystal stem is lost in her grip, and the dark liquid inside seems to absorb all the light in the room. Marco, my kind, hardworking fiancé, senses the tension coiling in my shoulders and squeezes my knee under the table. It's a small, secret comfort that almost works. Rosetta leans toward her husband, Victor Viri, a man who has mastered the art of being present and invisible at the same time. She lowers her voice, a conspiratorial murmur that's meant to be private but still loud enough to be a performance. In Italian, she says, "Poverina, she's sweet but not sturdy. He needs a wife who won't run. Poor little thing." She assumes I don't understand. She assumes a lot of things about me, that my quietness is weakness, that my politeness is ignorance. I spent 2 years in Rome on a research fellowship, living in a tiny apartment near the Tiber, learning the city's rhythm and its language until they were part of my own. I take a slow sip of water, letting the cold glass steady my hand. I swallow, then look directly at her, not with anger but with a clarity that feels like turning on a bright light in a dim room. I answer in the same dialect, my voice calm and even. "I don't run," I say in Italian. "I choose." The room freezes. A cousin's fork clinks against his china plate and keeps clinking, a tiny, frantic sound in the sudden, vast silence. Every conversation around the long table gutters out like a candle in a breeze. Marco's face goes pale, then a flash of pride lights his eyes, and then just as quickly it's replaced by a deep, familiar fear. It all happens in 3 seconds. His hand on my knee tightens, not in comfort anymore, but in a desperate plea for me to stop. But I can't. This isn't the beginning of a fight, it's the end of one I've been losing quietly for months. I turn my head slightly, my focus entirely on Rosetta. I repeat myself, still in Italian, speaking slowly enough that no one, not even the cousins who only know a few phrases, can claim confusion. "Respect is the only way I stay." She blinks once, twice. It's the small, involuntary reaction of someone who has just realized her private weapon isn't private at all. For a year, she has used her language as a fortress, a way to speak about me while I was right there, reducing me to an outsider in my own life. Now I've walked through the gate and met her in the courtyard. Victor, my future father-in-law, sets his wine glass down with careful, deliberate precision. He watches both of us, his expression unreadable, but he doesn't choose a side out loud. I feel Marco's sister, Sophia, staring at me. She whispers to her husband, loud enough for me to hear. She speaks. The word "she" lands like a slur, a label for something foreign and unexpected. I do not smile, I do not gloat, I simply hold the line I've just drawn. I switch to English, my voice level, including the whole table now. "I lived in Rome for 2 years. If you talk about me, please talk to me." A different kind of silence settles over the table, heavier this time. It feels like the weather changing over water. The air goes still, the sky darkens, loaded with a storm. Rosetta, a master of control, reclaims the room. She raises her glass, her composure a mask locked back into place. "To family," she says in perfect, cheerful English, "and to the ties that bind." The toast never mentions me by name. It's an erasure, a final, petty attempt to put me back in my place, but it's too late. The place cards have already been shuffled. Back in my queen's apartment, the silence is a relief. The air smells like paper and glue and the faint, floral scent of wedding favors. I'm sitting at a folding table I've set up in my small living room, surrounded by boxes. In front of me are neat stacks of place cards, each one hand-lettered in gold ink. My own name, Marco's, Mom, Dad. And there, on the top of a small pile, is one for Rosetta. I'd scripted her name with the same careful hand I use for fragile things, a gesture of hope that now feels naive. On my laptop screen, a single unopened email sits flagged, glowing with importance. The sender is Lenway Global and the subject line reads, Offer of Employment. Milan, I've been ignoring it for a week, pretending it wasn't an option, but after tonight it feels less like an option and more like a lifeline. I click it open. The offer is stark and beautiful. A 12-month contract in Milan as a senior project lead. The salary is $135,000 a year. There's a $10,000 relocation stipend and 6 months of rent covered, up to $18,000. It's more money than I've ever made, a chance to do work that I love in a city that I understand. The deadline to accept is in 3 days. The date blinks on the screen like a timer wired to my chest. I picture Marco's life here. His consulting clients are in Manhattan high-rises. His roots run deep into the concrete of this city. His mother expects a certain kind of loyalty, one that looks a lot like obedience. The line I drew tonight wasn't a trick. It was a promise to myself. I refused to start a marriage with a secret this big, this life-altering, tucked away in my inbox. I get up, walk to my printer, and print the entire offer, all 3 pages of it. The machine whirs, spitting out the words that could change everything. I slide the warm pages into a clean manila folder. On the tab, I take a thick black marker and write in clear block letters, Our choice. At dawn, I'm awake. The sky outside my window is a bruised purple, not yet ready for the day. I fill my stovetop mocha pot with water and coffee grounds, the familiar ritual a comfort. The pot sputters and hisses on the flame, a sound that feels like it's on my side. When the espresso is ready, dark and fragrant, I pour it into 2 small cups. Marco is still asleep, his face soft in the early light. I gently shake his shoulder. He stirs, his eyes blinking open, confused for a second before he smiles at me. It's the smile I fell in love with, open and unguarded. I hand him a cup of coffee, then the manila folder. No ultimatums, I say, my voice quiet but firm. I just want us to choose together. He sits up, leaning against the headboard, and starts to read. I watch his face, the way his forehead creases when he's concentrating. It's the part of him I trust the most, that place where he figures things out. He reads every line, every number, every clause. He doesn't say a word until he's finished. He looks from the paper to me, and I see a flicker of the same fear from last night, but this time it's followed by something else. Resolution. I choose you, he says, and the words seem to cost him and free him at the same time. We agree right then and there. We'll get married today, no matter who applauds or who glares, and we'll decide about Milan together before the deadline. We're a team. Just as we make the pact, my phone buzzes on the nightstand. It's a text from Rosetta. Good morning, dear. So excited for today. Let me know if you need anything at all. It's polite on the surface, but underneath, I feel the pressure, the expectation. I look at the place cards still sitting on my folding table. I finally understand what I'm really arranging. It's not about seating, it's about creating space. We get dressed and head to the venue early. I brace myself for Rosetta's next move. The morning of my wedding feels less like a celebration and more like a strategic operation. The first thing I do is text Rosetta in Italian, keeping the language between us. We can disagree, but we will not demean. I meant what I said last night. I'm drawing the boundary again, this time in writing. Her reply comes back almost immediately, a pivot back to English as if to deny the ground we now share. Of course, dear, family is everything. It sounds like a slogan from a cheesy poster, not a bridge between us. It's a dismissal, a pat on the head. I won't let her isolate me. I create a new group text. Me, Marco, and his father, Victor. I forward my text and her reply to the group. I'm putting everything in the daylight. No more shadows for her to operate in. Marco sees the texts and immediately calls his mother. I can hear his tense, muffled voice from the other room. He comes back a few minutes later, his jaw tight. She said I embarrassed her in front of her guests, he tells me. I told her I was proud of you. The line went quiet after that, he said. I spend the next hour on the phone shoring up our defenses. I call the venue manager and confirm that our contract is intact, every detail as we planned it. Then I change all the contact codes and passwords for our account, making sure only Marco and I can authorize changes. I set a simple rule for myself: any attack gets daylight. No more backroom battles, no more hushed whispers. I follow up with a calm, clear email to all our vendors, the caterer, the DJ, the photographer. Please do not accept any changes to our arrangements unless they are confirmed in writing by both me and Marco. I put the printed Lenway offer in my tote bag. Its weight is a strange comfort, a solid reminder of a different path. It feels less like a choice between two futures and more like a choice between two versions of myself. Just as I'm starting to think we might have gotten ahead of the storm, my phone rings. It's my best friend, Dana Morgan, and she's breathless. Julia, you need to hear this. Your florist just called me. They think the wedding is canceled. I caught it just in time. My stomach drops. What? Who called them? Someone claiming to be the mother of the groom, Dana says, her voice tight with anger. The florist said she was very convincing. Said you two had a huge fight and called the whole thing off. The florist forwards me the call log. The number was blocked, of course, but the intent was crystal clear. Sabotage. While I'm still processing, Dana is already in motion. She's the most practical person I know. I'm driving over there right now, she says. I'll put you on speakerphone with my card so you can authorize paying the full balance. We're locking this down, and she does. Within 20 minutes, the flower order is secure. We add a password to the order, espresso. If a caller can't say the password, no changes can be made. It's a small victory, but it comes at a cost. The florist had already released some of the peonies I'd wanted for my bouquet. We have to pivot to garden roses. It's a tiny detail, but it feels like a wound. Another piece of our day chipped away. I immediately start a paper trail. I send a follow-up email to the florist, recapping the incident and listing by name the only 3 people authorized to make changes: me, Marco, and Dana. I copy Marco and the venue manager, then I text a brief summary of what happened to Victor. His reply is just 2 words: I'm sorry. It's more than his wife has ever said, and it carries a weight of unspoken sadness. Before I delete the florist's voicemail detailing the call, I save a copy to a new folder on my laptop. I name the folder Receipts. Later that afternoon, Marco meets his mother for coffee. He says he wanted to give her a chance to be the mother he wishes she was. He comes home 2 hours later, his face etched with a disappointment so deep it looks like pain. He pulls a crisp bank check from his wallet and slaps it on the kitchen counter. It's for $25,000. She said this was to help us start right, Marco says, his voice flat. She told me it was to help me get on my feet without my distractions. The insult hangs in the air between us. I'm the distraction. The check isn't a gift, it's a bribe. It's a tool to reassert her control, to remind Marco where the power and the money lies. We stand there for a moment, looking at the check like it's a bomb. We make the decision together without a single moment of hesitation. We're returning it. I take out a piece of my nicest stationery, the same kind I used for our vows. In my best script, the same gold ink from the place cards, I write a short note in Italian. Non siamo in vendita. We are not for sale. Before we put it in the envelope, I make a photocopy of the check and my note. I date both copies and scan them into my receipts folder. I'm building a case not for a court but for our own sanity. The next morning, I hand-deliver the envelope myself. I don't take it to their house. I take it to Victor's downtown office, a quiet, neutral space. He's an accountant and his office is calm and orderly. He takes the envelope from my hand, his expression somber. I'll make sure she gets it, he says. He doesn't defend her, doesn't try to explain the check away. He just looks tired. That night, the cost of our decisions settles in. Marco is quiet, his jaw tight. He's mourning the mother he thought he had, the one he keeps hoping will reappear. I hold him on our small sofa while the espresso pot from this morning cools on the stove, its metal body cold and clean. The final blow of the day lands just before midnight. My phone lights up with a voicemail from an unknown number. I press play and hear Rosetta's voice, low and venomous, speaking in rapid-fire Italian. She must have thought I wouldn't understand the nuances, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. "Enjoy your free ride, little actress," she sneers. "You think you're so clever with your little sentences, but you're just a girl chasing a name. Milana will spit you out. You'll come crawling back and he'll see you for what you are." I don't cry, I don't even flinch. A strange, cold calm settles over me. I'm done being the victim in her little drama. I sit down at my laptop, place my phone next to the microphone, and hit record. I capture the entire message. Then I open a new document and transcribe every word with a clear, precise English translation directly underneath it. I save the audio file and the document to my receipts folder. Then I attach both files to a new email. I send it to Marco and to Victor. The subject line is simple. For clarity, in the body of the email I write only one sentence. "This is the line I will not cross back over." Marco reads the email, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. He picks up his phone and calls his mother. I can hear him from across the room, his voice low but shaking with rage. "Do not speak to my wife like that ever again." He puts a hard emphasis on the words "my wife." It's a declaration. Victor's reply to my email arrives a few minutes later. "I have received this. I have no excuses for it. Are you okay?" My first tactic, drawing a polite boundary, had only half worked. The attacks just moved into the back channels, so I turned on all the lights. We gather our things and head to the wedding venue. Our guest list is smaller now, our plans tighter. There are fewer openings for interference. The war is on, and I'm ready to fight it with the truth. The morning of the wedding, my phone buzzes with a call from a number I don't recognize at first. It's my supervisor, Karen Blake. Her voice is professional, but there's an undercurrent of concern. "Julia, I got a very strange message yesterday afternoon," she says. "It was from someone claiming to be your future mother-in-law. She said she was concerned about you, that you were taking on too much and seemed unreliable." My blood runs cold. She went after my job. She tried to poison my professional reputation. Karen reads the transcript of the voicemail back to me, and it's a masterpiece of passive-aggressive sabotage, filled with fake concern about my well-being and hints that I might not be up to my responsibilities. I take a deep breath. "Karen, that's her, and I'm so sorry you were dragged into this. Here's the context." I don't get emotional, I just state the facts. Then I open my laptop and email her the entire receipts folder with a short, professional cover note. "I'm dealing with a difficult family situation, but I want to assure you of my commitment. I plan to handle this with clear boundaries and maintain my focus on my work." Karen is quiet for a moment after I finish. "Julia," she says, and her voice is firm, "I judge you by your work, and your work is excellent. You've earned that trust." The relief is so intense my shoulders physically drop, but then she adds a warning. "That said, if this escalates, I'll have to involve human resources. We need to maintain clean boundaries, no family drama spilling into the office." I understand completely. I've just been put on notice. I've been protected, but I'm now a liability. After the call, I immediately set my work email to an out-of-office status, 2 days off for my wedding. Laptop closed, only available for true emergencies. As a final precaution, I write a summary of the situation and my conversation with Karen and email it to my personal account, just to have a record outside of the company's servers. My war with Rosetta now has collateral damage. I add Ethan Cole, the hiring manager at Lenway Global, to my list of people to call right after the ceremony. The Milan offer is no longer just an option, it feels like a necessary exit strategy. Before we leave for the ceremony, I print the Lenway offer again. This time I stick a yellow post-it note to the top page. It reads, "Talk after vows, decide together." At sunrise, with the city still quiet, I hand it to Marco along with a fresh cup of espresso. We sit on the edge of our bed, the printed pages spread out between us, and we talk. We underline the words that matter most: respect, partnership, growth. This isn't about running away from his family. It's about running toward a life we build ourselves. We get practical. He pulls out a notepad and lists his consulting clients. He figures he can move 3 of them to remote contracts within 60 days. It's a risk, but it's doable. We count the costs in simple, honest terms: the distance from our families, the time zones, the challenge of starting fresh in a new country. We set a private rule for ourselves, a foundation for our marriage. We will make no decisions motivated by calming someone else's fear. Our choices will be about building our life, not managing someone else's anxiety. We'll face your parents and mine together, he says, taking my hand. I promise him the same. My phone buzzes with a text from my mom. Ceremony is smaller. Don't post anything online until we call you. My parents aren't asking questions. They're offering support. Their trust is a calm harbor in all this chaos. My dad replies a minute later, "We're there for you. We love you." It's so simple, so different from the tangled mess of the virus. I take out the vows we wrote for each other and scan them with my phone. The words matter. I'm keeping proof of everything we promised. The pushback starts almost immediately. Rosetta begins flooding Marco's phone with texts. "Are you sure about this? Is this really what you want? Don't you think you're moving too fast?" He replies to each one with a single, unwavering word: "Yes." A cousin posts a vague, passive-aggressive status on social media about girls chasing money overseas. Dana screenshots it, sends it to me for my records, and moves on. We're not getting pulled into public fights, but for every jab, there's a quiet gesture of support. Marco's best friend, Louis, who's been living in Spain for a year, texts him, "Dude, I heard you might be making a move. I've got the remote work thing down. I'll help you figure out the time zones and the international invoices. It's easier than you think." Then Victor calls, not Marco, but me. "I can book a car to bring your parents from their hotel to the venue," he offers, "and for any other guests who need it." He doesn't ask to be put in charge. He doesn't offer advice. He just offers help, a small, practical piece of support. We now have our own team. We add 2 official allies for the day. Dana will run interference at the venue, handling any issues that pop up. Louis will be in charge of fielding any urgent calls to Marco. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, allowing calls only from a short list of approved numbers: Marco, Dana, Mom, Dad, and the venue manager. We even create a code word for a true emergency: Cardinal. If either of us hears that word from our team, we step out together to handle it. We are a united front. We agree that any new manipulation will be met head-on in the language it was delivered. No more translation games, no more pretending we don't understand. We arrive at the venue through a side entrance, avoiding the lobby where opinions and judgments might be lurking. Dana meets us in the hallway, her face grim. "Check the place cards," she says, keeping her voice low. A few of them had been rearranged. She'd fixed them, putting them back according to my original chart. She pulls the swapped cards from her pocket. On them, Rosetta and I were moved to opposite ends of the head table, and a cluster of Rosetta's closest friends were now seated right next to Marco. The evidence was small, but the intent was huge. I walked down the narrow aisle lined with vases of garden roses. They weren't my first choice, but now they feel like a symbol of resilience, of beauty that adapts. Marco is waiting for me at the end, and his eyes are steady on mine. He doesn't look away once. The officiant keeps the ceremony short, simple, and strong. We speak the vows we wrote ourselves, our voices clear in the quiet room. "I will build with you, not for you," Marco says to me. "I will not let fear drive our choices," I say to him. Rosetta is in the front row, her smile pressed into place like a sticker on a wooden doll, flat and lifeless. During my vows, I see Victor watching me. When I say the line, "We will leave places that require our silence," his eyes flicker with understanding. He knows exactly what I mean. We sign the marriage license, we kiss, and for the first time all day, we both exhale. The ceremony is done. Our wedding exists. It's ours. Now we just have to choose the life that follows it. After the ceremony, the venue manager, a kind man named Mr. Edwards, discreetly hands me a folded piece of paper. It's a log from the front desk. Someone identifying herself by Marco's last name had called twice, trying to change the seating chart and the bar order. The times on the log line up perfectly with a string of texts Rosetta had sent Marco, trying to distract him. It was organized. Dana pulls the wrong place cards out of her pocket. My careful gold script next to the crude, hasty replacements. Rosetta and I were moved far apart while her friends were clustered around Marco like a board meeting. This is the hard proof I needed. It confirms I'm not paranoid, I'm being targeted. I take a picture of the log and the two sets of place cards side by side. I email the images to Victor with a simple subject line. I prefer facts. His reply is almost instant. I understand. A minute later, another email. Can you please forward me copies of these? I send them immediately. The game has changed. I stop asking for permission to protect my own wedding day. I'm no longer defending, I'm in control. I call the venue manager and change the final password for all vendor instructions. The new word is cardinal, only Marco, Dana, and I know it. With the evidence in hand, I feel a surge of clarity. I'm done playing defense, it's time to shrink the battlefield. I find Mr. Edwards and ask him to remove the microphone from the toast table. There will be no open mic for veiled insults. We cut the reception down to a tight 60 minutes and move our first dance to the very beginning. We dance, we cut the cake, and then we leave. There will be no space for a hijack. I set an auto-reply on my phone for all family group texts. Thank you for the well wishes. We are turning our phones off to enjoy the evening and will get back to everyone tomorrow. I call the caterer directly. No last-minute substitutions will be accepted. If anyone calls claiming to be us, they are to be told that the couple has locked in all choices. I give Louis, Marco's friend, a new job. If anyone tries to corner Marco for a private chat, he is to swoop in and escort them to the patio for photos. Then I make the biggest move of all. I find Victor in a quiet corner. I need you to walk Rosetta over to say hello to us when she's ready, I say gently, not when she's feeling cornered or angry. He nods, understanding that I'm offering a path to peace, but on my terms. Then I call the venue and instruct them to remove Rosetta's name from all vendor contact lists. I tell them explicitly, do not accept her approvals for anything. The bridge is burned. The second I do it, I feel lighter. It's like opening a window in a smoky room. There's clean air around the fire now. The deadlines are closing in. The Lenway offer expires in less than 72 hours. An alert from a travel website pops up on my phone. Flights to Milan are cheapest if booked by midnight tomorrow. As if on cue, an email arrives from Ethan Cole at Lenway Global. Hi Julia, just checking in. If you accept, we can begin your remote onboarding process as early as next week. Our housing assistance team is ready to go whenever you are. The efficiency is both thrilling and terrifying. Marco sits down and maps out his client plan. He schedules 3 calls for Sunday morning where he'll pitch his new remote consulting plan, complete with clear deliverables and communication schedules. My parents, sensing the shift, call me. Whatever you decide, we have your backs, my dad says. We can drive you to the airport if you go. They don't argue, they don't question, they just ask what we need. That night in our quiet apartment, we talk through the logistics. We make lists, storage for the furniture we want to keep, donation piles for what we don't, sublet options for our apartment. We schedule a 20-minute window for that night, 9:00 p.m. That's when we'll make the final decision. I take out 2 blank pieces of paper. At the top of one, I write costs we accept. On the other, costs we refuse. Together, we start filling them out. Under costs we accept, we write missing holidays, navigating time zones, the ache of distance. Under costs we refuse, we write disrespect, secrets, living under someone else's control. We set one final rule for the moment. No one sleeps until we decide. At exactly 9:00 p.m., we sit side by side at my laptop. We open the email from Ethan Cole. I move the cursor over the accept offer button. Marco puts his hand over mine on the trackpad. Together, we click. A wave of calm washes over me. It's done. I immediately reply to Ethan. Dear Ethan, we accept. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We're ready to start. I copy Marco on the email and create a new shared folder in our cloud drive labeled Milan. Then I forward our acceptance confirmation to Victor. I do not send it to Rosetta. The note I wrote, "We are not for sale," goes into our wedding keepsake box, a stark reminder of the line we drew. I Venmo the tips to all our vendors with a personal note. Thank you for helping us protect our day. Then I call my mom and dad. We're moving to Milan for a year, I tell them. There's a sharp intake of breath, then my mom starts to cry, but they're tears of pride. Oh, honey, she says. We're so proud of you. Marco calls his top 3 clients and sets up calls for Monday. 2 of them agree to the meeting immediately, 1 hesitates. We know there will be losses. We've already accepted them. That night, for the first time in what feels like forever, we go to sleep in the deep, profound calm that follows a decision made with both hands on the wheel. In the quiet after the reception, in a small side room at the venue, Marco and I read our vows again, just to each other. The noise and the family and the tension fade away. It's just us. I look him in the eye and repeat the line I said to his mother at the rehearsal dinner, this time as a promise to him. In Italian, I say, "Rispetto è grave l'unico modo in cui resto." Respect is the only way I stay. He nods, his eyes serious. I will not let anyone speak about you like you're not in the room, he promises. A photographer, a friend of Dana's, snaps a single photo of us in that moment. We're not holding champagne flutes, we're holding the simple white coffee cups the venue uses. It feels more like us. We skipped the bouquet toss, the long speeches, the staged jokes. We kept the important parts, the kiss, the cake, the walk out into the cool night air, hand in hand. At one point, Rosetta refused to be in a photo with me. Victor saw it happen and gently but firmly insisted on one with both of us standing next to him. He put an arm around each of us. His smile is soft in the picture, but his eyes look tired. My revenge sharpens in that moment. It's not about shouting or making scenes. It's about simple, undeniable truth delivered in her own language with proof to back it up. We leave the reception early. Dana drives us back to my apartment where the boxes of place cards are waiting, my name taped to the side of one of them. The life they were meant to arrange is already gone. We're building a new one. The next morning, Ethan's reply is already in my inbox. It's full of welcome paperwork and a link to a housing website. There are 3 pre-vetted apartment options near Porta Venezia, a beautiful neighborhood in Milan. We look at the photos together. We choose a small, sunny one with a narrow balcony and classic tiled floors. The 6 months of rent covered by Lenway will more than pay for it. The machinery of our new life is already cranking into gear. I sign the relocation agreement and send a scanned copy of my passport photo. There's no confusing jargon, just simple, clear steps forward. We go online and book 2 one-way flights for 2 weeks from today. The confirmation email lands with a satisfying ping. Then we walk to the corner store and buy 2 extra suitcases. We make a checklist on a whiteboard in the kitchen, notify landlord, arrange storage, donate clothes, set up mail forwarding, change address on driver's licenses. The calendar fills up with tasks, each one a box to be checked, a step on the path we've chosen. The abstract decision from last night becomes a concrete, walkable plan. I call my landlord and give our 30 days notice. He's sad to see us go, but he's fair. We agree on a walkthrough date. I spend the rest of the afternoon taking photos of every room, every corner, documenting the apartment's condition for a clean, drama-free exit. The goodbyes are the hardest part. They are the price of our freedom. My mom and dad host a small farewell dinner at their house. Mom makes her famous lasagna, the one she makes for every special occasion, and cries softly into the bowl of ricotta cheese as she mixes it. My dad, a man of few words, quietly packs up all the leftovers for us as if we're moving to Mars and won't have food. I promise to call them every Sunday morning their time, no exceptions unless we're on a plane. It's a promise I know I have to keep. Marco's friends throw us a last-minute goodbye party on a rooftop in Brooklyn. They give him a brand new mocha pot for making espresso and a pocket phrasebook for Italian, and they all make him practice saying, "My wife is a genius." He blushes, but he does it. We spend the next week dismantling our life. We ship just 2 boxes to our new address in Milan: clothes, books, a framed print of the Brooklyn Bridge, and the box of our wedding place cards. We drop off bags and bags of donations at a church thrift store. I let go of 3 winter coats that felt like old armor I no longer needed. Marco speaks again to his one hesitant client. After a long conversation, they agree to a 3-month trial period for his remote services with clear check-ins and deliverables. It's a win. On our last night, we walk across the Queensboro Bridge at sunset. The whole of Manhattan is laid out before us, glittering and immense. The city seems to be telling us that it will be here when we come back, that we're not losing it forever. But we know we are losing something. We're accepting the cost. Birthdays will be missed. Holidays will be on a screen. We will have to fight time zones to hear a familiar voice. There will be an ocean between us and the life we used to know. We accept it. We chose this. We land with that strange, slow-motion feeling that comes when a decision turns into reality. The plane settles, the luggage reel hums, and for a moment I let myself believe this beauty of it all. The sun tilting over tiled roofs, the city smell that's part bread and part diesel and part something sweeter like history in the air. Our apartment is small and sunlit, the kind of place that forces you to live close to each other. The floor is old tile, cool under my bare feet. The balcony barely holds 2 chairs and a plant we will probably kill by forgetting to water it once, but it has a view of a courtyard where washing lines cross like little flags. I set the suitcases down and feel the small, ridiculous thrill of having my name on a mailbox in a foreign city. Ethan meets me at Lenway's Milan office the next morning. He's shorter than I expected and smiles like he means it. "Welcome," he says in English, then switches to Italian when I answer back in the language I polished in Rome. He gives me the office plan, shows me the schedule, introduces me to my team. Luca is all sharp angles and faster sentences. Chiara has a notebook and a way of making everyone feel like their part matters. Adel tells a joke under pressure and makes the room breathe. They're good people and they want to do work that doesn't feel performative. My first week is a mix of orientation and small victories. I set my desk by a window, put the framed photo of Marco drinking coffee on the sill, and unpack a pen cup that says, "Do the work." My project is straightforward enough to be satisfying. Align 2 offices on shared timelines and get teams talking like neighbors, not strangers. I start with a kickoff that's blunt and humane. Roles, dates, one-line goals I refuse to muddle. I speak the plan in both languages, Italian for the people who need it, English for the others, because clarity reduces drama. Ethan checks in often. He likes that I don't spin stories, I just say what I see and what I expect. "Keep your head down," he says once, smiling, which I know means keep doing the job, but also don't let small fires distract you. At lunch, I buy a sandwich and force myself to eat outside on the balcony, watching a woman below sweep crumbs with a broom that looks like it's seen 100 winters. I call Mom. She wants to know if the bread is good. She's the same where she always was interested in the small comforts. I tell her about the bakery down the street and laugh when Dad tries to pronounce Porta Venezia. Karen from work emails me a congratulatory note and a thumbs up. The small approvals are necessary medicine. Marco settles into a rhythm too. He makes a little desk in the bedroom, stringing fairy lights over the monitor like someone trying to make the office feel like home. He starts with 3 clients he can easily shift to remote. 2 of them sign off on the changes fast, the 3rd waits. He makes a neat page on his laptop describing his hours, deliverables, and invoice cadence. He practices Italian in the mornings, muttering phrases that make me smile. "Un cappuccino per favor," he says like a man learning a new muscle. We keep our shared calendar color-coded, green for income, yellow for fixed bills, blue for the little luxuries we'll earn later. It's a magnet system on the fridge that somehow calms us both. The third client is the one that makes him lose sleep. They delay a signature which bites into our buffer and forces him to hustle. He emails, calls, and eventually wins trust with a clean proposal and a promise of weekly check-ins. He also joins a nearby coworking spot a few days a week so he can feel other people breathing in the same time frame. The coworking desk is a small victory parade. Someone else making a noise means you don't have to be the only voice in the room. He texts me recipes for Sunday sauce. Victor sends pictures of his own pot full and steaming as if to say he endorses our cooking choices now. It's a quiet, steady kind of support. Distance creates its own games. Rosetta goes quiet at first, radio silence that feels like a withheld blow. Then she sends little things, a weather emoji one day, a photo of a lopsided cake the next with the caption "First try." The cake picture lands heavy and weird, but also oddly human. Victor calls more often. He tells me about a cousin who liked my dress, about a florist who said the roses were fine, about small neighborhood news. He never speaks for Rosetta, but he doesn't need to. He's the middle who wants things to be gentler than they were. We start mailing thank you notes in Italian. I handwrite one to Victor, "Grazie per il tuo aiuto." The ink smudges a little because my hand is busy and because I want the script to look imperfectly honest. To Rosetta, I send a neutral card with a photo of the cake we cut, nothing added, no invitation. It's a small olive branch without strings. She replies with a short line in English about the weather and then, a week later, a text in broken Italian asking how to say "I'm proud." It's clumsy and earnest, and my chest tightens in a way that's almost forgiveness. Dana schedules a visit in 3 months and promises to bring extra patience with her. Louis texts once a week with time zone hacks and a link to an invoicing app that doesn't charge a fortune for international transfers. We update the receipts folder on the cloud when we need to, mostly to remind ourselves we're not making things up. The folder feels less like a weapon now and more like a ledger of our own course. We check it sometimes and then close it because our life here is more often full of the small, dumb consolation of success. A project delivered 2 days early, a client who laughs at your joke, a neighbor who knocks on the door to borrow sugar. We refuse to feed drama. When a cousin posts something mean in English and Italian, we don't answer publicly. We keep our life visible where it matters: photos of the balcony at dusk, a boomerang of us laughing over cheap Prosecco, a postcard mom can put on her fridge. The quiet signals travel better than noise ever did. Rosetta's messages become more practical than performative, recipes, whether one-word updates. Sometimes they come in Italian, sometimes English, sometimes not at all. The silence used to feel like a blade, now it's a space that lets us rest. I still keep the place card with family in my top drawer. It's a reminder of the table where all of this began. At night we walk past the Duomo sometimes, the cathedral like a promise written in stone. We sit on the steps and let the city talk around us, and if a night is hard we make espresso on our balcony and hold cups instead of words. I teach Marco a phrase: "La vita non è grave una performance." Life isn't a performance. He repeats it until the rhythm sits in his mouth. He starts saying it when emails get sharp or the third client huffs about a deadline. It becomes a shield and a joke. Every so often Victor sends a photo from Brooklyn, an empty park bench, the river at dusk. He calls more in English than Italian, careful with words but not distant. Rosetta texts a weather update once a week now and sometimes a picture of a sunflower she grew in a small pot. It's not perfect. It's not a fairy tale, but it's ours, and for the first time in years I feel that exact, steady kind of peace that comes when you stop proving yourself and start building. The revenge I'd wanted didn't look like retribution. It looked like a life that could survive silence and turn small signals into something that mattered. My project hit a snag in a way that felt both stupid and inevitable. A regional lead, the kind who'd been at the company forever and who liked to promise the moon to keep his bosses happy, told a client we'd deliver a phase by a date we simply couldn't meet. Luca came to me furious. He'd built the timeline, he'd flagged the risks, and then someone outside our small team made a glittering promise. We were suddenly 2 weeks behind before we even had the chance to catch our breath. I pulled everyone into a quick stand-up in the small conference room with the whiteboard. The room smelled faintly of coffee and detergent, the kind of smell that seems to hang in offices like a neutral witness. I drew boxes and arrows. I scribbled names and dates. I made the problem look like boxes you could move and not like an accusation laid on someone's chest. We broke the work into smaller pieces, reassigned a couple of tasks, and added a buffer that was honest and human. There's nothing theatrical about fixing a schedule. It's pencil marks and follow-up emails and the slow work of getting people to keep a promise they hadn't made. Later, a senior manager suggested we soften the message to the client. He meant we should say the date was a suggestion and then hope they didn't notice the holdup. I refused. I wrote back on the spot we would be clear, we would own the change, and we'd offer a realistic new target plus the steps to get there. Then I wrote the same message in Italian and English. I did that on purpose. Language had become one of my tools. It kept people honest and it made it impossible for someone to claim they hadn't understood. If you can't say it in both tongues, you leave room for excuses. Ethan backed me in front of the room. He said simply, "Follow Julia's plan." He didn't sugarcoat it. That tiny sentence was like a shield. People quieted and the timeline moved from rumor to plan, but being visible has a price. My name was now on deliverables and everyone could see where I pointed. Praise draws attention and attention draws targets. At home, the hum of life shifted into that subtle tension I'd learned to recognize. Dishes piling, Marco answering one extra email, my phone buzzing at odd hours. We were running hot. Still, we planned a day trip to Lake Como for the weekend. Rest isn't a reward, I've come to believe, it's fuel. We booked a train and promised ourselves 2 days away from screens and deadlines. The whiteboard drew lines for work. The train tickets were our promise to not live by them entirely. I closed the office door that night and copied the project plan to a personal folder. I wrote Grace on a little post-it and stuck it to my laptop as a reminder that clarity and kindness could coexist. That night, after a long stretch of emails, I walked into the apartment and Marco was boiling pasta like he'd done it 100 times. He smiled when I set down my bag. The little domestic rituals, coffee made, plates washed, were a counterweight to the pressure I carried around my neck. They reminded me why I was doing this at all. When Victor called, it was the kind of call that makes you sit very still. He asked to speak to me alone, and I agreed right away. His voice had that weary honesty I'd seen at the wedding, the same kindness with a frayed edge. "I want to explain something, not excuse it," he said. He told me a story I hadn't known. When Rosetta was young, she'd received a scholarship to study away. She turned it down to stay near her mother, who was sick. She'd thought she was doing the right thing. She'd believed staying meant being loyal. Later, the choice lodged in her like a splinter. She never forgave herself for what she called her smallness. He said she learned how to hold people close by holding their choices, thinking that if she could keep others near, she could make up for the life she had refused. Hearing that didn't excuse the things she'd done. It explained the shape of the fear I was facing. It gave me a map of where her anger came from, not from a single moment, but from a lifetime of punishing herself by punishing others. Victor didn't ask me to come back and try to fix it. He asked me for a kind of understanding that felt dangerous and useful at the same time. "I'm tired of being careful," he said. "I don't want her to keep doing this." His voice wavered. He sounded old and honest, someone who'd been watching a slow, painful repetition and who'd finally decided to tell the truth about it. I told him quietly that I wouldn't offer my life to fix a past I didn't live. I wouldn't be the person who stepped into the hole she left behind. He said, "I know," and there was a long silence as if he'd been holding that truth inside for a long time. I told Marco what Victor had said. He listened longer than he spoke. He let the story sit between us. "It explains," he said finally, "but it doesn't excuse." We decided when we faced Rosetta next, we would speak to the fear, not the performance. We would name the thing that was driving her behavior and try to make room for repair without making ourselves the repairman. It felt like the right balance, firm but not cruel. The plan mapped itself out in my head. Proof, clarity, and an appeal to something human, not humiliation, not revenge, understanding with hard boundaries. A few days later, Dana sent me a screenshot that made my stomach drop. It was a family group chat I hadn't been part of, but someone had taken a picture and forwarded it. My name appeared next to words in both English and Italian: gold digger, career girl, phrases that matched the tone of Rosetta's voicemail. Seeing the same language we'd heard in private now floating in a public forum made the pattern painfully clear. It wasn't a single moment of cruelty. It was a system, a set of stories the family told themselves to keep the edges where they wanted them. I printed the screenshot and added it to the receipts folder. Facts, not fury, I told myself. That folder had started as a way to protect our wedding and had become a ledger of a truth I could show without theatrics. I matched the phrases in the chat to the voicemail. The wording lined up like a stencil. Someone was repeating the same lines in different places to make them seem normal. Once you see the pattern, it looks less like me and more like a machine designed to keep people in certain roles. The last safe option, ignoring it, evaporated. Silence would let the pattern be accepted. I didn't want to keep signing that quiet contract, so I set a simple plan: show the truth once in person in her language with the receipts folder in hand. I wanted neither spectacle nor a public trial. I wanted a kitchen, espresso cups, and an honest set of documents on the table. New Year's felt right, enough time to prepare, not so much that we'd invent new fears. We picked a few practical rules for the visit. Hotel, not their house, one family dinner, one private offer of coffee with Rosetta, only if she agreed. I booked the tickets and sent Victor the itinerary. I didn't send it to Rosetta. That decision was intentional. She'd shown she could weaponize information. Victor understood that. He replied with a short message: "I'll be there." I felt both a tightening and a relief. The plan was simple and surgical. Evidence laid out, the language I would use rehearsed, and ground rules for what we'd accept and what we wouldn't. It felt less like a confrontation and more like a boundary with a polite knock on the door. We started to plan the return with as much calm as we could summon. The terms had to be precise so no one could claim confusion later. Hotel, not their house, was first because we didn't want anyone to feel trapped or to create a scene in a family living room. One dinner was a limit that meant the visit had an end. It kept it from dragging into a week of undermining. We put private coffee on the table only as an offer, not an obligation. We rehearsed what I would say in Italian. Short, clear sentences without the excess of emotion that burns like fuel. My line would be firm but not theatrical. I will not be spoken about like I am not here. If you want to have a family, you must accept us both. We practiced it until the words sounded like facts, not threats. We packed the receipts folder into my bag. The photocopy of the check, the note "we are not for sale," the voicemail transcript and audio, vendor logs, the place cards that showed how someone had tried to rearrange the room that day. We didn't want to humiliate her. We wanted honesty in a room where she couldn't pretend none of it had happened. We also chose a couple of motifs to carry: 2 espresso cups, small and white, ours. A place card with family written in Italian, not as an accusation but as an invitation to define what family meant now. I asked Victor to stand in the kitchen with us, not as a referee but as a witness, someone steady who could hold a fragile moment without stepping in to fix it. The timing mattered. I planned to hand off my project before we left so work wouldn't be a lever to pull on landing. Marco's client report was due the morning we arrive, and we'd made plans to have it ready in advance. The dinner was at 7, which meant we'd arrive in the afternoon, have a chance to breathe, and then say what needed to be said without an audience. We folded the plan and put it in the nightstand like a map. Going to sleep with it felt like tucking a promise under a pillow. We weren't naive. We knew boundaries could be messy. But we wanted the chance to show the truth once in a language she had used to wound, and to let consequence be the teacher, not shame. The night before we fly, everything that had been quiet and steady between us unspooled into something loud and small. We argued about socks on the floor like grown-ups stuck in a kid's fight. I said something sharp about a missed text. He answered with a tone that lodged in my ribs and wouldn't leave. It wasn't the socks or the text. Underneath, there was a hum of something older, the fear that we were walking into a trap, the fear that one of us would fail the other. I said, I won't be trapped again, and I meant the lifetime of quietly giving in I'd almost learned to accept. He heard me like an accusation. You'll leave me, he shot back, and the words formed a wall between us. For an hour, we sat on opposite ends of the sofa like strangers who'd misplaced each other's names. The apartment felt too big for two people who'd promised the same thing. I broke the silence first because holding breath felt worse. I'm scared, I said. It was small and true. He answered, me too, and the air came back in. We reached for each other like people finding a lifeline in the dark. We watched the mocha pot steam on the stove, the little whistle a steady heartbeat. Motif, coffee as our language. We apologized in full sentences, no blame hopping, no old wounds thrown like knives. We spoke about what we were afraid of and what we needed. We touched foreheads and made a truce we meant to keep. In the morning we packed, tender and tired, the argument not erased but folded and put away. Money tightened around us like a belt too near the ribs when one of Marco's clients backed out. It was a clean, quiet loss, an email, a polite regret, a closing door. The magnets on the fridge clicked to new positions, green money squares dipped down, blue fun magnets went dark. We agreed to cut the blue magnets for a month. No dinners out, no weekend trains. The green stayed for groceries and rent. I covered the gap with my first Lenway paycheck and a small cushion we'd saved from wedding gifts. It wasn't dramatic. It was math and choices and the kind of hard, steady conversation that builds real life. We spoke plainly. What do we have? What can wait? We listed things we could delay without panic. I postponed buying a new coat. I kept my old one. It was worn but warm. Marco's pride stung. Losing income felt like losing a part of himself. I said what I meant. Your worth isn't that invoice. He nodded, not fully reassured, but nods can be bridges. We printed the new budget and taped it inside a cabinet so only we saw it, like a secret map. Money worry taught us the difference between panic and planning. We tightened our belts and promised the world we loved would still exist when we had room to breathe again. Then my work hit a snag that felt like my fault even when it wasn't. A vendor missed a delivery for the project I was leading, an important piece of a timeline, and suddenly we were 2 days behind. My cheeks flushed with that hot shame I know too well, the kind that shows up when someone's watch is in your hands and it slips. I blamed myself briefly because that's easier than blaming the world. I walked the block to clear my head and recited aloud the things I could control. The next email, the new schedule, the people I could call, and the honest explanations I would give. Ethan told me to use the buffer we had built in and move forward. That's leadership, not failure, he said, and I wrote his words on a sticky note and stuck it on my laptop. I sent a crisp, calm reschedule with exact steps, no drama, no apology for gravity. Luca texted a thumbs up and a coffee emoji. I wrote back a picture of a mocha pot. Little gestures matter. I remembered the place cards in the box, grace and proof, and wrote them again on a new card. Proof because facts matter, grace because facts shouldn't flatten people. I packed the cards into the receipts folder. I slept light, but I slept. The day we were set to fly, a letter arrived that landed like a small, strange benediction. It was from Rosetta on heavy paper, 2 pages in careful English, not defensive and not theatrical. She wrote, I was wrong at dinner. I called the florist. I feared losing my son and I became small. She named the things she'd done. She didn't try to water them down. She didn't excuse the voicemail. She called it wrong. The honesty surprised me. At the end, she wrote one sentence in Italian, non so come ma voglio imparare. I don't know how, but I want to learn. I folded the letter and felt the muscles around my throat loosen in a way I hadn't expected. I cried a little, not the ugly, triumphant kind of cry, but something quieter, like release. I handed the letter to Marco. He read a line and then looked up, tears in his eyes that looked like breathing again. We agreed to bring the letter with us but not to flaunt it like a trophy. It was a door, maybe a weak one, but a door nonetheless. The defeat of the past of being talked about in whispers lifted enough for us to stand straighter. We put the receipts folder in my bag, copies of the check, the note "we are not for sale," the vendor logs, the voicemail transcript, the photo of the swapped place cards. We folded the letter into Marco's coat pocket. He walked out the door holding it like someone carrying a fragile thing. We left for the airport with the plan, truth, offered once in a language she used to wound, and otherwise no chasing. The air on the plane felt like a new skin. We stayed in a small hotel the night we arrived. The very house was old and familiar before we had even set foot in the kitchen, the kind of house that smelled like garlic, lemon, and the small history of a life lived in the same map of rooms. Victor met us at the door with a quiet, steady face. He led us not into the formal dining room but into the kitchen, and I asked him quietly, "Kitchen, please?" He nodded, the agreement of an ally who understood what a kitchen can do. Hold truth, hold repair, hold a kind of work that's not public. The kitchen was warm, a pot simmered on the stove. The tiles were cool underfoot. I set 2 espresso cups on the counter, small white things, the motif that had come with us like a talisman. I laid the receipts folder on the counter and opened it, letting the things be seen without fanfare. I placed the place card reading "family" on top, then "grace" and "proof." The arrangement felt tidy and honest, not theatrical. Rosetta came in after a moment, hands shaking a little, her eyes guarded. She looked at the cards and then at me. I asked in Italian, soft but clear, "May we speak here before we join the table?" She nodded, the words small and cautious and real. The kitchen felt like a place where people could change their minds, where confession could be made without an audience. I set the rules in my head: speak once in her language, show the truth, and then sit down or step back. The ground felt steady enough to stand on. I laid the materials out slowly, like I was setting a table rather than staging an accusation. The kitchen counter was cool under my palms. First, the photocopy of the check, $25,000, crisp and absurd. Beside it, my note in my neat script, "Non siamo in vendita, we are not for sale." Then the voicemail transcript printed with my translation underneath, black words that didn't soften when read aloud. The vendor logs from the venue were next, time-stamped and boring and damning. Finally, the photo of the swapped place cards, my careful gold letters beside a rush of someone else's handwriting, as if whoever had done it didn't think about how names hold space. I didn't push anything toward Rosetta. I let the papers sit there, honest and ordinary. I didn't want to perform. I wanted her to see with her own eyes exactly what had been done in her name. Victor stood by the sink, hands folded, his face the weathered calm of someone who'd seen storms and learned to hold an umbrella without opening it too wide. Marco was beside me, his jaw set in that way that meant he was steady, not loud. I wanted their steadiness next to me. I spoke in Italian, every word chosen like a stone on a path. "Non parlerete di me come si non fossi qui," I said. "I will not be spoken about like I am not here." It came out soft and exact. Then I said the line I'd promised him, the one that had kept me steady through the months of smoke and whispers. "Rispetto è grave l'unico modo in cui resto." Respect is the only way I stay, no heat, no flourish, just fact. Victor's hands were clasped so tight he looked like he was holding himself together, but he did not waver. Marco, who had practiced the name of his new life in the quiet of our apartment, said in halting Italian the words he had practiced like a promise, "Ho scelto mia moglie e continuo a seguirla." I chose my wife and I keep choosing her. He said it slow so there could be no mistake. I slid the family chat screenshot across last, the words that had tried to shape me into something small, gold digger, career girl, in both languages like a deliberate echo. "This is the echo I will not live inside," I said in English, because some things needed to land in both tongues. Then I stopped talking. I let the silence hold the room, the way a held breath can make people notice the truth. Rosetta looked at the papers as if they might bite. Her hands trembled a little. She looked not at me at first but at the espresso cups we'd left on the counter, as if finding some anchor in the routine of a thing that makes mornings possible. She swallowed and then she met my eyes. The kitchen felt small and large at once, like a room stretched by meaning. Her voice came out thin and careful. In halting Italian she said, "Ho fatto quest'cose, avevo paura. Ho espagliato, I did these things, I was afraid, I was wrong." The sentence landed like someone setting down a heavy coat. You could feel the weight leave her shoulders a little. She turned to Marco and the words she used cut through the history between them. Ho rifiutato la mia vita una volta, ho cercato di farti rimanere. I turned down my life once, I tried to make you stay. She looked older in that moment, not the sharp woman at the rehearsal dinner but someone who had carried a regret like a stone. Tears came, not the clean, performative kind but the raw sort that leave tracks and don't care if anyone sees. Then, in a voice that was almost a whisper, she said something that made my chest ache with surprise. Voglio imparare la tua lingua. I want to learn your language. It was clumsy and brave in the same breath. I could see the fear behind it. Learning a language is like learning a different way of living. I answered plainly because truth needed no flourish. I will not be your enemy. But I won't be your captive. It was the line I'd drawn the first night, the limit I'd promised myself I wouldn't cross back over. She placed her hand over the letter Marco had tucked beside the receipts, the one where she'd written what she did, and touched it as if it might burn or bless. Her fingers were not steady. She looked like someone who had finally put two small truths together and realized the whole picture might change. The kitchen did something quiet then. It breathed the way a room does when a storm passes. Victor let out a slow sound that might have been relief or exhaustion. Marco's shoulders dropped a fraction as if some long-held tension had finally been acknowledged. I felt tired in a way that felt like honest work done. We laid terms out plainly and simply, not as laws to be buried in a drawer but as things two people could hold to. No back-channel calls to my work, no calling vendors pretending to be us, no insults in any language. Those were the firm edges. We added hope, monthly video calls where each call would have a topic and agenda so there was no room for surprise ambushes. We asked for one trip from them to visit us in Milan within the year where they'd stay nearby, not in our apartment, so meetings felt like choices, not obligations. Victor spoke first in a voice that had always carried the weight of being careful. "We will honor this," he said in English, and his words held the room together like a small, steady nail. Rosetta's reply was slower. She chose Italian with clear effort. "Provero a volte espagliero chiedo pazienza non poter." I will try, I will fail sometimes. I ask for patience, not power. It wasn't a vow that would fix everything, but it was a promise to try. We poured espresso into the two white cups on the counter, the motif that had carried us from my queen's kitchen to their house. Marco and I clinked cups with them, a small, private clink that felt like a treaty signed in steam. Then we walked into the dining room together. The table looked like any other family table, candles, plates, a cake that leaned a little funny, but we had changed how we sat in relation to it. No one made a speech. No one tried to reframe the past with flourishes or excuses. We ate, and conversation orbited around small things, the city, the weather, a joke about the lopsided cake that made Victor laugh. Rosetta served pieces of her imperfect cake with a hand that trembled just enough to show she had been doing something hard. She smiled with the corners of her eyes. It was ugly and perfect, like the work of trying. Back in Milan, the routine of our life smoothed the edges of the fight. The balcony became our little theater, two chairs, a plant that survived us both, and the mocha pot that announced mornings with a tiny, confident whistle. Winter light pooled on our small tiled floor, making the kitchen glow in the mornings. I led my project to delivery 2 days early. We celebrated with greasy takeout and a cheap bottle of Prosecco that tasted like victory because we were together. Marco landed a new client through a referral from the coworking space. I watched the green magnet edge a little higher on our fridge board and felt the small, steady joy of a life built of tiny wins. We kept our Sunday calls with Mom and Dad like a ritual. Mom wanted to know if the bread was different. Dad wanted to tell us about the cat. They sent videos and small, fierce support that felt like a harbor. Victor started sending photos from his walks on the Brooklyn Promenade, an empty bench, the river at dusk, and he'd text, "Next, our walk in Milan." His messages were like seeds. Rosetta found a way in that surprised me. She sent a short text once a week, whether a recipe, a word she was trying in Italian. Sometimes it was clumsy, sometimes it was right. I answered with a photo of what we cooked and one line in both languages. When she sent a picture of a sunflower she'd put on her windowsill, my chest did a strange flip. I sent back a photo of the balcony chairs and the mocha pot. Small signals, not grand gestures, became the new language. We planned weekend trains to the lakes. We packed sandwiches and a blanket and left early on a bright Saturday. The trains smelled of old paper and coffee and someone else's perfume. We walked on paths that made the city feel like a promise you kept. Those weekends were medicine. They were the reason we could go back to work with a kind of patience that meant something. Repair took rules. We wrote them down and taped the paper inside a kitchen cupboard like a talisman. Truth, no triangles, slow down, no sails. It was simple, like carving a path through underbrush. When a cousin tried to stir old gossip at a family group chat, we didn't roar, we redirected. "That's a conversation for them to have, not us," Marco would say, and it put the heat out. The receipts folder lived in the cloud and occasionally on my desk, but I hardly opened it. It existed so I didn't have to fight shadows again. We agreed that apologies didn't erase harm. They opened a door to do better, and we looked for better, not perfection. Rosetta booked her first video lesson with a language app. She asked me how to say "I'm proud." I told her, "Sono fiera." She repeated it until the words fit her mouth like a new dress. Victor booked flights to visit in the spring. He stayed in a small hotel nearby, not at our apartment. Boundaries, we'd learned, were not walls but the lines that let people choose how to love. We set a date to revisit our terms in 6 months, like a check-in at work, because love benefits from structure too. It sounded odd to say it aloud, but it was true. Nothing changed overnight, but the rules kept us honest. We kept building, one small gesture at a time, pouring espresso into 2 little cups and clinking softly to the life we had chosen. The table from the rehearsal dinner lived in my head like a rude echo for months. Chairs, names, the way someone thought they could move a card and move a life. Now the echo sits on a shelf. I put the family place card in a small frame and slid grace and proof behind it like a secret. The frame is ordinary, a dollar store square painted white, and it looks ridiculous and perfect beside our stack of travel guides. Little things matter, little things keep you honest. I keep the note "We are not for sale" in the drawer with my passport. When I shove my hand inside for stamps or tickets, my fingers hit it and I remember who I am. Boundaries travel with you when you've made them real. They live under toothbrushes and boarding passes now, not just as lines in a notebook. The cost is real. Birthdays come through a screen, the time zones play their small, relentless tricks, and sometimes Marco still says a word in Italian that comes out clumsy and beautiful, and I laugh because he's trying. We miss dinners with Mom and Dad, and our parents' living room will never feel quite the same as the balcony light over Milan. There's a quiet ache, an absence in holidays and in the unplanned conversations that make family feel like family. The gain is obvious in other ways. We laugh without checking the doorway first. I sleep without rehearsing my responses. Work feels like a thing I choose to do, not a thing that defines my worth. We have small rituals. Espresso at dawn, a walk past the Duomo when the city is empty, a postcard to Mom that says simply, "We're okay." Victor sends pictures of the river, Rosetta sends a recipe or a weather note. They're small signals. They're not perfection, but they're movement. I text Dano a photo of the lopsided cake we baked, our version of the one Rosetta tried. She replies, "Your revenge tastes good." I type back, and I mean it. It isn't revenge. It's respect with consequences. Both things are true, and both of them fit on our little shelf right next to the place card that finally stopped echoing. If you've drawn a hard line to protect your life, tell me how it went in the comments. Subscribe for more stories like this and check the next video to hear what happened when a boundary changed everything again.